If you watch this channel, you know that we have tackled a few vintage audio videos already, mostly focusing on what is achievable when you put your mind and your wallet to making something old new again. Those projects, while fun, admittedly were on the costlier side. With this latest project, my goal was to find a hopefully easier solution, one that wouldn't break the bank, but still bring our latest vintage find into 2022. Now for this project, I wanted a setup built around my beloved KLIPSCH Heresy 4s. Like a lot of old school horn-loaded speakers from back in the day, the 4s are more efficient, making them easier to drive. This meant I didn't need a receiver with gobs of power, so I went with another classic stereo receiver from yesteryear, this time using the Marantz Model 2216. But before we get into how to take the 2216 into 2022, here's what you can expect if you opt to get one for yourself. The 2216 is a 16 watt per channel stereo receiver that was manufactured by Marantz from 1977 to 1980. The 2216 originally retailed for $240, which in today's money is about $800. The 2216 is a pretty simplistic receiver, showcasing Marantz's iconic look of its time, possessing only a couple of analog inputs, a built-in phono preamp, AM/FM tuner, and the ability to power 2 sets of loudspeakers, courtesy of its push-pin style binding posts. While the 2216 has risen in price on the used market in recent years, it remains one of the more affordable classic Marantz stereo receivers that you can go and get your hands on, with well-sorted examples fetching anywhere between $500 and $1,000 US, depending on the seller. As of this review, there are still a few on eBay ranging in price between $100, for parts quality, to $999 fully restored. While we can debate whether or not secondhand is still a good buy in 2022, there's no denying that the silver face and chunky chrome knobs of the 2216 has it over a lot of modern equipment in terms of style. Now on its own, without any updates, save for maybe a good cleaning or a once-over by a qualified tech, the 2216 is a very competent receiver, one that will drive a lot of modern speakers with an impedance greater than, say, 4 ohms, and that have a relative sensitivity of 88 dB or higher. It has zero issues driving the Heresy 4s, as well as even our Forte 4s and the new Monitor Audio Silver 500 towers. So while it may only have 16 watts of power, it doesn't sound weak or anemic when listening. What's more, unlike a lot of modern receivers, the 2216 has manual controls for things like treble, bass, balance, and even loudness. And what does the 2216 sound like? Keeping in mind when discussing vintage gear, your experience may vary based on any number of factors, the biggest two being age and condition of your particular unit. In good condition, you can expect bass that is firm, deep, and relatively dynamic, but maybe lacking just a hair in focus and definition. In other words, your speakers will play plenty deep, provided they themselves have bass, with good, solid delivery, but they may not fully resolve finer textures and details with the same clarity as modern equipment. But this is hi-fi nitpicking on my part. Now the mid-range will be relatively neutral to maybe just a touch laid back or smooth, resting in line to perhaps a smidge or two behind your speaker's front baffle, for a presentation that is bound to be more soothing than in your face. Now if you turn things up, you can expect a level of excitement to enter the fold. For casual listening, this receiver pairs well with a wide range of music. Now as for the treble, here's where you're going to likely discover just what condition your 2216 is in. If the treble is airy, smooth, and not overly forward, then your Marantz is probably in good working condition. However, if you hear noise or fizz, distortion, or worse, you just don't hear highs at all, it's time to take your 2216 to the shop. Now in terms of soundstage, it should have good width and depth with surprising center fill. Again, provided your speakers also have these traits, though with respect to absolute separation, detail, and focus, don't be surprised if the Marantz seems just a little bit soft, even if your unit is in good condition. Nothing vague or completely lacking in clarity, but don't expect performers or instruments to be completely locked in 3-dimensional space. Dynamically, so long as you don't ask it to power difficult to drive speakers, this 16 watt per channel receiver will sound more powerful than you're likely to believe. Should you get a 2216 of your own, it may force you to rethink what you thought you knew about watts and how they relate to dynamics, because this little Marantz delivers. Now, before you run off and scoop up one of these, know that you are buying a 40-year-old receiver, and that no two receivers are going to be alike with respect to performance. That said, and assuming your sample is in good or good after servicing condition, here's what else you need to know about the Marantz. The push-pin style binding posts are very, very small, and if your speaker cable is too thick, I'm talking like 12 gauge bare wire, you may have a real difficult time connecting that wire to the Marantz. I recommend using 14 or 16 gauge wire for best results. Actually, the one upgrade I think I would pay for is actually changing out the small push-pin posts for some more traditional 5-way binding posts if you're, into it. Now, beyond its sound quality, the tuner is no better or worse than what I've experienced on our costlier Pioneer SX780. The phono preamp is also quite nice, very good if you're building your very first vinyl rig, and there is even an auxiliary input should you want to add a CD player or music streamer. Speaking of streaming, here's how we took this vintage receiver into 2022. We tested out 3 options that will let you add some modern day conveniences without spending a fortune or requiring you to make complicated modifications. First up, we have the BLUESOUND node. Connecting the node to the 2216's single auxiliary input completely transforms the capability of the Marantz, or frankly, any vintage receiver with an extra analog input. The node gives the Marantz HDMI connectivity, but more than that, it gives the Marantz some remote control capability. By connecting the node to the auxiliary input and setting the Marantz volume to full, or let's say 3 o'clock, the node effectively will see the 2216 as just an amp, allowing you to control the volume of your system using your smartphone and the BlueOS app, or your TV's remote, provided you have control over HDMI enabled. This is incredibly cool, not to mention convenient. Just remember, and this is very important, to turn the volume on the Marantz down should you want to use the phono preamp or tuner. Forget to do that and you may be not so pleasantly surprised. The node also allows you to add a subwoofer, not to mention enjoy streaming music via one of the best streaming platforms in the game. This includes high-res audio and even MQA files from Tidal. Now, does the node change the sound of the Marantz? No, though I suppose the ability to add a subwoofer, at least for some of you, will be a major upgrade in sound quality. For those of you who are 2.0 or 2.1 home theater enthusiasts, you will finally be able to partake in vintage hi-fi. The node also makes it possible to integrate your vintage rig into a whole home distributed audio setup, provided you leave the Marantz on because, well, there's no remote power on or off with the 2216. Well, I suppose you could plug it into a smart outlet, which you could then program to power the unit on and off, but now I'm getting off track. Now, if the node is still a stretch financially, or maybe you just don't need HDMI connectivity and subwoofer support, my budget go-to solution remains the ARYLIC S50 Pro Plus. For roughly $200, the ARYLIC gives you the lion's share of functionality of the node, but for roughly half the price. We literally built an ARYLIC S50 Pro into our Pioneer 780. That's how much I love this little streamer and its app. Is the node a better option? Yes, but for half the price, you're not giving up much to the BLUESOUND by going with the ARYLIC. To save even more, my third option is the ANDOVER Audio SONGBIRD, which, spoiler alert, is essentially a stripped-down ARYLIC. The SONGBIRD uses the same ARYLIC app, and if you happen to already have an ARYLIC product, your existing ARYLIC hardware will see the ANDOVER streamer as just another ARYLIC piece. Any of these 3 streaming solutions will work with any vintage receiver and pair especially well with the receivers we've tested from both Marantz and Pioneer. So get whatever streamer works for you and your budget. Just know that for the most comprehensive list of features, the node simply cannot be beat. I have to say, I continue to be amazed by what's possible when building systems around vintage gear. It's not that vintage gear is automatically better than new equipment. It's not, but it's rarely, if ever, outright embarrassed. While there is an element of risk when buying vintage, enthusiasts and even some repair shops will tell you that old equipment is often easier to work on and potentially keep working compared to newer products. But if you don't have a local repair shop or don't fancy yourself a DIY technician, buying vintage may not be for you. Then, of course, there is the rising costs of everything, even used hi-fi equipment. And while some will argue this point, buying second-hand or vintage doesn't always equal savings. So shop smart and be honest with yourself about what type of hi-fi experience you want. But all that aside, with the right ancillary equipment, it's fun knowing that you can enjoy some of today's modern conveniences with gear you may have considered long dead and buried. So that's it for this video, or at least for me. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I mean, I thought it was a fun experience.
Yeah.
The Node is utterly fantastic. And so easy to include. I still love the ARYLIC, especially at its price, but I feel the Node is worth splurging on.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing I really feel that you left out were the loud noises that occur when you turn the unit on. Can't say that I missed that little bonus feature.
Well, okay. To be fair, some of those noises are or can be attributed to the condition of our particular piece, and that's another way that you can tell whether or not your vintage find is maybe working properly or on its way out or needing service or cleaning or things like that. But there is a certain kind of old school like power up sound that even properly working pieces will have. Ours kind of developed a little bit more character towards the end, which tells me I probably need to send it in. But yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but other than that, I think it's a great way to bring some new life to a vintage receiver.
Yeah.
And hopefully people will think this was helpful.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really kind of enjoy the visual look of seeing the old school stuff out in our room, but still knowing that if I want to watch a TV show or whatever and use my Apple TV to ride the volume, I can. And that's one of the beautiful things about the Node. Oh,
yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. As much as I love the look of vintage receivers or vintage gear in general, I'm a city girl, you know. I wasn't born in a barn.
Modern convenience.
Modern conveniences all the way.
Oh, man. Anything else?
No.
All right. That's it. That is now our video for the Marantz 2216 modernizing. I don't know what the title of this thing is going to be called, but that's the video. What did you guys think? Let us know down in the comments. And while you're down there, I have a question of the day because it's one of our videos. And that is, in what ways have you brought your vintage hi-fi into the modern era? Maybe you've thought of something I haven't thought of, so let me know down in the comments below. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and go ahead and ring that bell so that you're notified when new videos come out. If you use any of the links that Kristi left for you down below, know that that is a great way that you guys have continued to show your support for this channel and the work that we do here, and we thank you all very much for doing that. Follow me on Instagram at recoveringaudiophile, and that is it for us today. So remember, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next video. Bye.